Hello and welcome to Lesson 16 of Software Design and Development for National 5 Computing Science. Today we're going to cover input validation. I know we've kind of covered this in previous lessons, but we haven't formally covered input validation, so we're going to do that today. Here I've got a replet all about input validation, and before we start, let me just tell you what input validation is. You know how sometimes you're asked to enter a number into a program? For example, you might be asked to enter a number between 1 and 10. Well, if you type in the number 12, for example, that's not a valid number. Or if you're asked to enter a username and it has to be between 6 and 12 characters in length, but you only type in 2 characters, that is not a valid username. So input validation is a technique to make sure that what the user enters is valid. So let's go with a number between 1 and 10 example. So here's a program that asks the user for a number, and it asks between 1 and 10, and then it just prints the number that they entered. But I could type in 15, and it accepts that. That's not between 1 and 10. So to validate it, we use 2 lines of code in Python. We have a while loop, and while the number is out of range, we ask them to try again. So while the number is less than the lowest possible number, or the number is higher than the highest possible number, then we ask them for a new number. Try again between 1 and 10. So now I cannot enter a number that is out of range. -4 is too low, 15 is too high, 60 is too high, 11 is too high, 0 is too low, but when I eventually get it within the range, it accepts it. So this is input validation. It's as simple as that. You know how to get a number. To validate it just takes 2 lines of code. While the number is less than the smallest or bigger than the biggest, get a new number. Now I mentioned the example with usernames. Let's say you're getting a username and it has to be between 6 and 12 characters long. Enter a username. So we're doing the same thing, but this time it's a username. Now I could enter a username that's MR and it just accepts it. Or I could enter a big one. There we go. It just accepts that even though it's totally wrong. So we can do the same thing. 2 lines of code. But obviously because this is text, you can't just say while username is less than 6 or username is greater than 12, get a new username. This will not work because this is checking if the username is less than the number 6. What we need to check is the length of the username. And this is how we make sure that our username is within the right range of length. So let's run this. So if we type in Mr., it's too short. If we type a long one, it's too long. If it's too long, it's too long. If it's too short, it's too short. And then when you eventually get one right, for example, computing. There we go. Your username is computing. Beautiful. I kind of messed up the message here for my own preferences, but that's fine. So that is input validation. You get the input, and while that input is lower than the lowest or higher than the highest possible numbers or lengths, ask them to enter a new input. And then after that, you can do what you want with it. So there you go. Nice and quick one, input validation. This will be used very often at National 5 level and at higher level and even advanced higher. So make sure you memorize this. It's a really good technique for making sure that your user cannot enter invalid inputs. 2 lines of code there. That's all it takes. All right, I'll see you in the next one.